Well, hey, everybody, it's the Cryptid Huntress. Welcome into the show today. Happy Monday, y'all. Today in the United States, we are observing Memorial Day, where we honor all of the military personnel, all the soldiers who have lost their lives. And it is a day, it's a day of celebration for a lot of people, but for a lot of people, it's also a day of mourning and just observance. So we do honor all of those lives today. And I wanted to highlight an interesting topic today. We're going to be talking about the cryptid connection. And I just put her in her crate. I don't know how she got out. The military connection to cryptids today on our show. And to do that, I do have my good friend, Mr. Mark Machek, aka Cryptidville, on the show with me today. One of my favorite. I've got a lot of favorite veterans, y'all, but he is one as well. And so I hope you guys are having a wonderful weekend, or had a wonderful weekend, and are being safe today, especially if you're out at Lake Lanier. Okay, I gotta say that. And so thank you guys so much for being here. And man, we had a great show on Saturday night. If you guys missed that, please go back and watch that. I saw Harley in the chat today. Hey, Harley. Harley Owens was here with us on the show, and we had a great time talking about the East Tennessee werewolves, or actually werewolves all over Tennessee, and werewolf assaults and Dogman sightings. And we got into way more than just that on Saturday night. So thank you guys again for joining us there with that as well. Okay, well, if you guys would like to follow along with all my shows and everything, please go over to my website, check out my archives over there, and you can check out all my social media links and my calendar of events. I do have a conference coming up in July. That's the Full Disclosure Now conference down in St. Petersburg, Florida. I also have a Patreon if you guys would like to support my work. And I've got an Etsy shop. It's called War Woman Goods. Thank you guys so much for all of your support. Okay, well, we have a list of things to talk about today. I've got a lot of stuff to discuss with Mark. And so let's get the show started, you guys. This is going to be a really interesting show today. Okay, so yes, we are just going to be talking about the military cryptid connection from military personnel encountering cryptids to the numerous encounters with cryptids on and around military bases. What's the connection? What does our military know about Bigfoot, Dogman, and other cryptids? And could they even be working with them? And I wanted to make a quick note, you guys, that our good friend Nick Sylvester will be here on Wednesday. He's with the Truther community, and he may do a little work with Space Force, and he's got probably a lot to say about this topic as well. So please help me welcome to the show our friend Mark Machek, aka Cryptidville. Hey, Mark.
Hey, Jessica. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, thank you for being here. And I would say happy Memorial Day. Okay, but I know it's a day of observance. And I want to thank you for your service. And thank you for being here with me on this very special day today.
Well, thank you for having me on as a guest host.
Well, of course. Well, I know you've had quite a bit of experience with cryptids throughout your years. And if I remember correctly, I believe you were telling me a story about when you had a Bigfoot encounter on a military base. Maybe I think it was reserved for a book that someone was writing, but you did mention that you have had an encounter with a cryptid. Am I remembering that right?
Yeah, there was an encounter that I had. Well, not an encounter. It was a sighting, more or less, where I watched a Bigfoot run through an area. Just it ran through the opening, and it was a pretty wide open, clear plain, clear. What am I trying to say? Pretty much clear view of this thing as it ran through the opening, and there are aspects of that event that, as we like to say, there's always more to the story, right? So there's that more to the story. It has actually been reserved for a book. and in an effort to preserve um, the promise of use of that for that book, I have pretty much opted not to talk about it. But it does. Those events did uh, solidify some things later on in life, because uh, basically there are some podcasts out there that they talk about people's experiences on military installations, and uh, some of those events were very similar to what happened after that particular event, and um, it just was kind of interesting.
Hmm. I actually came across an encounter when I was doing some research last night. I came across an encounter that sounded very similar to what I remember you telling me before about your encounter that happened. And I thought, man, is this just kind of normal? Okay, for things like this to happen. I know a lot of people don't report their encounters, especially if they're in the military, on a military base. But I even have a friend who's part of one of my teams, my buddy Chris. He had an encounter with a Bigfoot down. I think he said it was Fort Benning, if I'm not mistaken, down in Middle Georgia, and it it was wild. I think they were out there doing some kind of training. I think you and I might have mentioned this to you before a while back, but he was doing some kind of training out in the woods, and came face to face with a Bigfoot. I think that got him actually started in the Bigfoot research. Actually, after that,
Well, to be honest, that was a a major contributor into the reasoning why I started looking for answers to the things that I was experiencing. You know, I'm not limited to just Bigfoot and Dogman encounters. I had uh, I had my first. Uh, I'm going to call it a reptilian encounter while I was at a military installation.
what?
Yeah, and it was very weird.
Well,
It was a weird
I would
experience.
imagine. Was it like in the forest, or was this like a
No,
what was the situation? Can you give me a little hint?
so I'll just tell you how it happened. So I was leaving our uh, workplace, and I had walked across the street, and there was another unit that was housed across the street, and I was going to hook the sidewalk and walk down to the barracks, and I'm going down the sidewalk, and I'm not paying any attention. All I knew was there were these soldiers outside of their unit building, and they were working on prepping some stuff for the field or whatever. And I'm walking down the sidewalk, and I'm not paying too much attention to anything. And all of a sudden, I get this feeling like my first intuition was there's somebody behind me, and there's somebody just staring at me, was the thoughts that came to my mind. And it just got so strong, and I just stopped. I dead stopped on the sidewalk, and I turned around, and there's a guy right behind me, and he's kind of like I don't I don't know how to. There's not very much other way to put this, but he was kind of like enthralled. He in at I couldn't tell whether he was enthralled with you know his walking or whether he was staring at me or what. But anyhow, when I turned around and I stopped, I was maybe a good 10 feet in front of him, and I didn't hear him or anything. And I turned around and I looked at him, and I could see the side of his face from his eye. It was like
Whoa.
doing like a super sag.
A
And
super sag.
yeah, it's like it was sagging down.
Was
It
it
was
like
almost,
holographic or was it
no, it was like the
in
dude had on,
3D?
it was like the dude had on a mask.
Oh, okay.
And as it was hanging down, I could see scales, and it kind of reminded me of like I don't know, kind of like what you would see on a sea turtle. It was that color,
Okay.
and
Whoa.
all of a sudden the dude stopped and he looked up at me, and it's like his cheek and everything sucked back up into position where it was supposed to be, and I gave him a dirty look, and I just turned around and kept on walking. Well, he turned and walked off the sidewalk in a totally opposite direction to me. He wanted to get away from me because I think that I saw something that I was not supposed to see.
Yeah, I would think so. I would think you probably weren't supposed to see that.
And
Did you receive any repercussions for seeing what you weren't supposed to see?
no,
No.
no. But the interesting thing about it was uh, this person was of a higher rank. There was no military courtesy observed or anything like that, and there was nothing said about it. And um, for those of you who don't know, when you are assigned to, now I was not a infantry MOS, or basically a infantry was not my job per se, uh, as far as my specialty, but I was assigned to a infantry MOS or infantry unit to support their operations. So
Okay.
for those that don't know, infantry guys have a tendency to be a little bit more on the hardcore side, and
Yeah, they do.
if you don't recognize and respect rank, you usually end up paying for it in one way or the other. And this guy did not say a word to me. He just turned and wanted to get away from me.
Oh, he needed to go back to his heat rock. I'm just kidding.
Hot rock.
Oh my gosh, back to his aquarium. That's a little bit terrifying, a little bit weird. I mean, to me,
Yeah,
it's
because I
not
mean,
super terrifying. It's just weird. But
I mean, what was he? What was,
this is in the military.
I was like, was the dude looking at some butt meat or something?
Some butt meat. Here we go with that frozen butt meat. I'm just kidding. It wouldn't been frozen. I mean, well, we hear about reptilians. Let's just say reptilians. Okay, being in the top levels of like our government and our military, our politicians, our celebrities. I mean, it sounds to me like you might have come face to face with one actually, and it makes you wonder how many are there, and who's one and who's not. I mean, I've covered this pretty extensively, like how to spot a reptilian and all that kind of stuff on my show, and it's kind of tongue in cheek, but it's kind of also not. Okay, it's kind of
Yeah.
like, well, this is a real thing.
Well, I had heard, up at that point, I had not heard of Barry's favorite person, David Icke, whatever you want to call him.
Yeah, that's funny.
I had not heard of him, Um, but later on when I did, you know, hear some of his stuff, I was like, I believe the guy 100% because, I have seen one myself.
Yeah. Andrew asked, I don't know what I'm usually pretty behind on the comments here, but he said any repercussions, proverbial knocks at your door by those 3-letter agencies. No, you didn't get any of that. It just was just never talked about. You mentioned something interesting because it was kind of like there could have been like a little mind control aspect to that too, right? Because you said that you were feeling a little bit off.
Yeah, I mean, it just kind of, as I was walking, it just was like this undeniable feeling that somebody was staring at me, for one, and that there was somebody behind me. And, outside of that, it wasn't anything more. But when I stopped and turned around and I saw that, I was like, what in the world?
Well, for us today, we have the convenience of having YouTube with all these videos about reptilians, and we're seeing, people that are diving into the topics and stuff. But back then, you didn't have that. Okay, I'm assuming, right? You said you didn't. David Icke wasn't, widely
Well,
known. It wasn't really talking
yeah,
about it too much back then, so it had to have been really confusing.
I'm sure that it was out there. I just had not been exposed to it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. You didn't mention what part of the country you're in. You don't have to say where exactly. Did you say where? I'm just
No, I
wondering,
did
like, what
not.
part of the country?
I would
You don't have
rather
to. You don't have to disclose it.
rather not because you know,
I get it.
I don't want any knocks at the door.
Yeah. You don't want that smoke. I'm just kidding.
There's a
I
lot of
get it.
I was gonna you know ask if I could set the tone, with one of an OG cryptid investigator saying extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and you always got to have some kind of receipt, you know, or you got to try to have some kind of receipt for whatever you experience, because it's one thing to you know I don't know, it gets kind of into the realm of where people can take what you relate as an experience, and they can say, oh well, this guy needs to go to the nut house or whatever, and the thing about it is, you know and a personal experience is just that, a personal experience. And I get it. I've been doing this for a long time, and I know how hard it is to document things in the moment, and
It is.
it just is very difficult to do that. So,
Yeah.
and trust me, they will knock on your door.
They will. That's right. Well, there's something that, okay, I don't want to get into this because I don't know the details on it yet, but my friend Kenny sent me a picture. It might have been a video of of somebody got like a thermal of what they say is a dog woman at the LBL. And I know you live up there. We don't have to talk about that today because I don't know details on it yet. Okay. But there's a video. I'm going to talk to him later today. We'll find out about it. I just got that last night. Okay. So
Interesting.
it's very interesting. It is. Because I know you've had your own encounters up there with a couple of them. And I don't know if it's dog women, okay, in particular, but definitely dog men up there. So yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but we'll talk about that next time we get more information on it. Okay. Um,
Yeah, definitely sounds interesting.
yeah, it does, right? It does. I mean, there's not a whole lot. I mean, is there a whole lot of photo evidence and thermal evidence of dogmen, actual dogmen at the LBL?
Well, I'm just gonna be honest. um, because I don't know any other way to be. Um,
I'll take that. I
you
feel you.
know, um, thermal thermal video is probably one of the worst uh, methods to try to document um, a cryptid, in my opinion, because I mean, yeah, it can help you spot something. It can it can it can show you, where something's at, what the temperature of that being or creature is. But the other thing that a lot of people don't understand, when you start using thermal, you know, it's basically what it's doing is it's taking uh, what it's seeing, and it's actually translating that onto a digital screen inside of the device. And because of that, it's actually breaking it down into pixels.
Okay.
And I guess what I'm trying to say is you may see things that are not necessarily there, and you may not see things that are there based
Okay.
on the device's interpretation of that thermal signature.
Good to know. Good advice. Good advice there. So just everybody keep that in mind whenever we're seeing evidence. And you know what? But it's actually kind of cool. I did see that video from the LBL. Looks kind of cool. But it is kind of hard to decipher what's what when you're looking through a thermal as well. It's just the outline, a lot of times too. So, anyways, let's go on. Let's get back to the military stuff because I mean, the LBL is on federal land, right? It's on federal land.
Hmm.
Doesn't mean it's military though. But I'm assuming that like the military might go in there and do some kind of training. Maybe. I mean, have you ever run into any kind of military personnel out there?
The only time I have ever, now, you hear a lot of stuff, and a lot of stuff that you hear is not necessarily true. You know, um, so in saying that, the only time I have ever ran into any military type guys over there was when we had a research outing that some guys tried to infiltrate.
Oh,
And um,
oh yeah.
these guys, it was stereotypical. If I was going to do it, this is the way that I would do it. You had basically what they did was they sent over a black guy, a Hispanic
Oh
guy,
yeah. I remember that.
and a redneck skinny white guy wearing a PBR belt buckle
Oh yeah. They
to try to
infiltrated. Tried to infiltrate.
try to infiltrate the group.
Undercovers.
Yeah,
Yeah. I get it.
and
We've had stuff like that happen too out there.
but as
Not
far
at the
as
LBL though.
but as far as seeing big military operations, I mean, it is not the LBO is not a training area.
It's
I don't
not.
care. I don't care what anybody tells you. It is not used as a training area for the military. If that were the case, then they would not need the biggest portion of their military installations would not be, their field area, where they did their training and stuff. Each installation has that. So there's really no need for them to train in an area that's a national forest or recreation area. Now, having said that, has there ever been an instance where people have been sent over there for a specific reason? I'm not going to say that that's never happened, but as far as to go over there and train and what have you, I I'm not buying that. I've never
Mhm.
seen it in 27 years, so
Okay. Well, I do know. Okay, so there's one instance that I had some of my team was up in, I think it was Uwari, maybe in North Carolina, and they did encounter some guys that were in full military, like SWAT gear. It was like SWAT gear. I don't know if that's military. They said they were like military or like paramilitary or something. They came walking out of the woods carrying their firearms and everything. And but you know what? Civilians do that too. Ask me how I know. Okay, at places, but that's a national forest right there. So
well the interesting thing about it is, you have to recognize that the majority of these cryptid, government, corporate interactions, they're not they're 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 not um, they don't operate in the way that a layperson would think that they would. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, the majority, if there's a because the military has guidelines that it has to follow, that you know cryptid use and interaction would be something that would possibly be outsourced to a corporation under a black budget program, and those black budget programs may employ contractors, and that's where I think a lot of these these things are taking place. Is it's not so much from the military aspect, but it's from the civilian contractor aspect. You're muted.
I was muted. Sorry, y'all. I have a habit of muting because I have a squeaky chair. Okay. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense though. Okay, makes a lot of sense. And there is that independent like or that military contractor aspect as well. And speaking of which, okay, so like I know we were going to talk about military encounters with cryptids and things like that today, and I wanted your personal experiences with all of this. And my goodness, you got some good ones, Mark. You got some really good ones. But some of the, I was doing some, like I said, I was doing some research last night and even this morning too. And of course, the one encounter that a lot of people know is that giant encounter out of Afghanistan back in, I think it was 2002 actually, and that was the giant of Kandahar. I think that's a really well known one, and I don't think those were, I don't know if those were contractors that went in there or if those were, I think it was an actual military unit, two of them actually that went in. And there's a couple of different cases of like the Afghan monster. I'm not sure if the Afghan monster is actually the giant of Kandahar or not, but they're similar stories. So I would assume it might be the same. But not only do they have the giant of Kandahar over there, I think Jody Cook had come on my show a while back, and he was talking about like Middle Eastern like dogmen and stuff out there that were actually like dog-headed men that were chopping off people's heads and stuff. I mean, I know it sounds weird, but um, there's plenty of stories about that actually out there. If you go digging around, but I think that's going to be one of the number one stories. But even like the jinn out of the Middle East as well, and a lot of military like personnel, soldiers that are stationed overseas, they have stories of being haunted. I guess you call it haunted by jinn over there. I don't know. Do you have any stories about that? Ever encountered a jinn?
No, I was over in the Middle East for a while, and I don't have any. pretty uneventful. Um, don't really have any um, anything that would fit into the show as far as an experience like that. Now I have heard some stuff where people have encountered shapeshifters and jinn and stuff like that, but as far as personal experiences, no.
No. Well, look, I've got some pictures right here too. I have a lot of pictures to show today, y'all. Mark, we got a lot of stuff to show. In case people are just wondering, there's a big story behind this, and I did a remote viewing target of this a long time ago, and I did have a gentleman that contacted me, Mark, who claimed to be the dad of one of the soldiers that was part of one of those units, and confirmed that it did happen, just like we talked about, where I believe our military was sent in to actually get a sample of a giant for cloning purposes. Gosh, that cloning comes up quite a bit with a lot of my remote viewing targets and stuff. But nonetheless, that was supposed to have happened in 2002, and an entire unit of military personnel were actually killed. I guess you say killed in action. I guess they went up there to go. The story, I think the cover story, and this is not released to the public, I don't think, right? But the story was they had gone up there. I don't really ever disclose why they had gone up there, but I think they had gone up there to go get a sample of a giant, and that means a body. Okay, that's what I think, according to the remote viewing data that happened on that. But nonetheless,
that means CRISPR babies.
CRISPR babies. That's right. Lots of CRISPR things going on. I mean, and that could account for some of these. Golly, I hate jumping around over topics and stuff, but that funding. Okay, the funding that someone with a 3-letter agency had gone before Congress asking for the funding to be changed, or to get some funding to eliminate those assets for that program they were working on. This is in the news. You can find documentation of this, of a super soldier program. Okay, and that was where they were. I'm going to say CRISPR. Maybe they were using CRISPR, but it was some kind of animal-human hybrid program or something, where they were using like bear and lion and wolf DNA on their special forces soldiers and stuff. And there could be some connections over to that Jimtown Road incident. Those 2 incidents, actually.
Could be.
It could be. Maybe they're doing some giant DNA experiments as well with some of our soldiers. So I don't think it's out of the question. I don't know. What do you think?
I would say probably that is in line with the because at the end of the day, if you have a any nation with a quote unquote military industrial complex is going to look for whatever can put them on top. And the I'm personally I'm not so much worried about cryptids anymore. I'm more worried about AI and AI robots.
Oh yeah, robots are something we probably should be looking out for and studying. Okay, I'm just gonna leave it at that. Studying. I'm not saying you need to learn how to disable one just in case, but you might need to learn how to disable them, if you know what I mean. Just for future reference. But yeah, I'm a little more worried about robots too. I mean, goodness, we covered the uncanny valley not too long ago, and that's just checking out all the robots that look human. They're just so human. There's something off though. They don't have that. What it goes back to that question I'm always asking: what does it mean to be human? Okay,
Mm-hmm.
they ain't human. Okay, those are not. They ain't like us or whatever, right? They ain't like us. So yeah, we gotta be careful. That is one of the upcoming things we need to be watching out for. Okay, for sure. And our military's 100% probably. I'm going to say 100% definitely using robots in some kind of way too, right?
Oh yeah. Some of the fighter jets and stuff like that. When you start getting up into the higher generations, those are AI driven. They're unmanned.
Yeah. Andrew says there's a robot version of me hanging out with robot grandma. No, there's not. Andrew, I don't know. I mean, I can't say for sure there's not. I don't know. I wouldn't be me that did it. Okay. I didn't make a robot version of me. That would be scary. Actually, that'd be very scary. But I did mention something about the cynocephali, the dog-headed men over in the Middle Eastern countries that Jody had mentioned a while back, and that is something that if you look at old world maps and stuff, there are depictions of dog-headed people on these old maps. I think that's a Piri Reis map from the 1590s, and it was not a matter of like, oh, these being like something that was just so odd, and like unicorns are to us today and dragons are to us today. This was just normal, apparently. Back at centuries ago, there were dog-headed men that used to fight humans in battles and stuff, and so this is something that militaries from centuries ago were coming up against. Fight, and these dog-headed men were not like animalistic all the way. They did eat humans, they said, but it was not something they didn't go after humans just to eat them. They were like a civilized, if you want to call it civilized, group of people, if you want to call them people. So, but this, I mean, it is depicted in artwork, it's depicted in literature, and this is something that I don't know if our military here in the United States has come up against an army of dog-headed men. And maybe women too, because we're hearing more about dog women now, Mark. But they could have. I just wanted to kind of set that tone though, because this is something that has gone on for centuries of groups of dog-headed men fighting humans in battles. So, just to get to the roots, I don't know. Could there be a connection to the dogmen that we're seeing today and these dog-headed people from centuries ago, Mark?
Yeah, and I think that that connection would probably be because, if you look at the whole Project Paperclip thing, we basically imported all the scientists that were working on those projects, instead of putting them where they belonged, because some of their experimentation was, I would assume, very horrendous. When you start doing unnatural things to people, I would say that connection probably plays a part in the things that people are seeing and encountering today.
Yeah, I think so too. I absolutely think so too. And so that's actually something that comes up with like the LBL too, and I've talked about it. I think that there could be these deep underground military bases and facilities. I know you said there's probably not a whole lot of military stuff going down in the LBL, but I don't know, underneath a lot of these federally owned pieces of property, I think there could be some kind of underground facilities and stuff going on there. I'm not saying for sure, but hey, I actually might even have a picture of some of these alleged deep underground military bases. And it looks like there might be one in Kentucky or a couple, but I don't know, maybe not. Maybe not. It's just all hearsay. This is for entertainment purposes only. Okay. But I think in a lot of places there could be some kind of military involvement, and maybe it's not above ground, maybe it's underground. Maybe they are working on experiments with, dog-headed people and working with them.
Could very well be.
Yeah, could be. I mean, because we're just trying to make sense of all this, just trying to make sense of it. That's all. Just trying to put it out there and totally make sense. Make sense where nothing really makes sense. I guess that's kind of the problem that we have. It's like a lot of things don't make sense. And for the average normal human, it's hard to wrap your head around there being a dog-headed person or even a werewolf, like being a real thing, even being a real thing. And let's not forget, we've got plenty of stories of werewolves being used in wars, from the Vietnam War, World War II, actually. The Nazi werewolves, or schmatzi, as my friend Bryce says, the schmatzi werewolves. These stories came from somewhere, right? At least that's what I think.
It's definitely interesting. You
Yeah.
know, you have to keep in mind the trend is that it still follows the same. What am I trying to say? It still follows the same propagation that it did then. And to say that, I'm meaning that, when you talk about werewolves and dogmen, of course, I believe that they are two separate things. And uh, the whole werewolf aspect comes into play under the use of dark magic, and it did back then the same as it does now.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Andrew says, Andrew Gnomes and Trucking Express says there used to be pillboxes at the LBL for military training. So yeah, I've heard that too, and I've seen some videos. So there used to be military drills done at the LBL, right? Is that what those are?
I'm hesitant to give the nod on that, and the reason why is because of the possibility that those structures could be things other than what they're being portrayed to be.
Oh, okay, gotcha. See, y'all, Mark is from the LBL. He lives right there. Okay, and he's been there for a long time, so he does have. Mark, you're my go-to for any kind of information on the LBL. Okay, because to me, you're the top authority in my book. Okay, because you've been there a long time and you've had some good experiences, and you tell it like you mean it and like it is. So I can appreciate that.
Well, I'm not in the personally. I'm not in the business of trying to aggrandize anything, you know. But in retrospect, I will tell you that if you go to the LBL, you do need to be careful,
Yeah.
because there are things over there that will get you.
Oh yeah. Yeah, please be careful, y'all. You got to be careful no matter where you go. I mean, the next thing that I wanted to talk about were actually some of these old Civil War battlefields, too. Okay, so, and we got to be careful at places like this. I talk about Old Green Eyes. I know, because that's one of my local cryptids, y'all. And so I talk about Old Green Eyes up at Chickamauga, at the Chickamauga battlefield. And I love talking about Old Green Eyes. I had Greg Smith with Backwoods Cryptids on here a while back, and we had a great conversation about it. He does boots on the ground field research up there, and people to this day still go out there to this battlefield, Mark. And not only are they encountering Old Green Eyes, which is some kind of entity that has bright, shining green eyes. Okay, and I know this is somebody made this. It's like an artistic rendition here of Old Green Eyes, but nobody really knows exactly what Old Green Eyes is. Some people say it's a werewolf. Some people think it's just an ancient entity, but it was seen on the battlefield eating something at Sagugway, by the way. They were seen eating the dead corpses, the corpses of the dead soldiers out there after this battle at Chickamauga. During the battle and after the battle, and let me tell you, 30,000+ men died over a 3 or 4 day battle out there in North Georgia, right at Chattanooga, Tennessee, right there in that area. And And so Old Green Eyes, to this day, people are going out there to that battlefield, and I guess I can say this on YouTube, but committing suicide out there. And it's really tragic, very tragic that happens out there. But something is like pulling people out there. Greg even told us his own story about how he had actually planned to do it out there, to do that to himself at some point. And it makes you wonder about some of these battlefields and the energy that it holds, Mark.
Well, an interesting correlation is you have the battlefield at the southern tip of the LBL, down around Dover, that there are reported things that happen down there. So it makes sense to me that there would be supernatural occurrences that would take place just on that fact alone.
True. Oh, yeah. Well, some of these places where there's a lot of battles and a lot of bloodshed, I think personally, I think that they could like open portals right there or something. There's been some kind of portal that's opened. I would think. I know that sounds kind of weird and to a lot of people, but I think that when there's so much tragedy and there's all that emotion that occurs there, it just and who's to say that these battles aren't fought on certain areas? And this could be a conspiratorial statement right here. But what if they're placed, like they have battles at certain places because of the land right there? Maybe, I hate to say this, but maybe it was like some of these things are pre-planned where there's war going on and things like that. It's only a thought. It's food for thought. Okay. Just because I know about that story about the Corpsewood Manor where those gentlemen put their house right down the road from Chickamauga on this piece of land at a particular spot at the advice of like Anton LaVey. Okay. And maybe it's the ley lines. Maybe it's some kind of energy center or a vortex. So I don't know. What do you think?
I think there possibly is a connection there. There's so there's so many things that I want to say that I can't. So it stands to reason to me that those places would be utilized for that reason, that there's a ley line or energy center in them.
Okay. Well, okay. You're just thinking.
I'm just thinking. I'm having a lot of stuff going through my mind.
Okay. Well, just think. Just sit on it for a minute. I'm gonna. I like this comment from Colleen. Colleen, I just saw your email today too. Thank you for sending me that email. I will write you back after the show today. So Colleen says Civil War battles often took place on native sites. Gettysburg had a stone similar to Aztec calendar stone, but that was vandalized and destroyed. The only part not destroyed, you can't get to under a rock. Wow. I was just about to talk about Gettysburg, actually. And so thank you, Colleen. That is really interesting. And I want to point out that we don't know our true history here. It's not in our history books. I don't know our true history. But I think that it goes way deeper, just like Colleen's saying here. We have Mayan ruins here in Georgia. And I think there's a lot of ancient Egyptian history here. I think there's a whole lot of Aztec and Mayan history here in North America. A lot of stuff that we just don't really know about, or we haven't been told about, or it's been covered up by the man-made lakes, Mark. Okay. I am really pushing this man-made lake cover up right now. Because I think it's important. I think it's an important piece of the missing piece of a puzzle right there. When we, I'm not saying we need to drain these lakes or anything. I'm not saying that because I love our lakes, but maybe we do. I don't know. Just to see what the hidden history is underneath there. But that's interesting that you're saying that Civil War battles often take place on native sites and Aztec sites. Okay, like this in Gettysburg, she says the Aztec calendar stone is there, and it's been vandalized and destroyed. It's underneath a rock. Okay, so a lot of spirit activity in Gettysburg to this day, Mark, a lot. And today is a day that we do honor all our fallen soldiers. And the Civil War, I think, probably took more young lives, probably old lives too, but lives out of any other war, or it's definitely here on U.S. soil than any other war. Just countless. I mean, I don't even know the number, but a lot of people lost their lives, and I would assume there's a lot of residual energy. You know, we talk about old Green Eyes up in Chickamauga, but in Gettysburg, my uncle just visited. He visits Gettysburg quite often. He's retired military as well, and there's a particular bridge that people go to where they usually have ghost sightings. And he went and took an offering. He said he took a cup of coffee or something last time he went, and he put the coffee on the bridge and he took a picture. He stood back, and there's a man walking past his camera, and he said that he's like, there's nobody else there. He was like, but there's a clear. It looks like a solid figure of a man walking past the camera.
That's wild.
It is wild, but these are some of the pictures that you can even get to this day. This is up at Gettysburg. These are some of the pictures that people have taken. I found some off the internet today, and that sure looks like a soldier to me. This one's peeking its head around the tree. That may be the bridge right there. That may be the bridge that my uncle was telling me about, and he sent me a picture of right there. I mean, that clearly looks like a soldier to me beside that man. And I wonder if he saw that while he was standing there. Probably not. But also if you go out, and here's the bridge again. I think that's the same bridge, another soldier. And here's some more pictures. Actually, that one right there kind of looked like a soldier carrying another on his back or something. I don't know right there. But I mean, these are like solid figures, you know, some of them, but a lot of them seem to still be engaged in battle too, and they're wearing their uniforms. It's almost like they're in a continuous loop of that residual energy, you know, of firing the cannons and shooting those cannons, and you know, just walking in formations and stuff as well. I have actually experienced. Oops. That's next. We're not getting to that one yet. But I've actually experienced myself at Pickett's Mill battlefield in Georgia. It's in, I'm going to say it's like northwest Georgia. Okay, it's either in Paulding County or Cobb County. I can't remember. But Pickett's Mill, maybe in Paulding. And not too far from the Etowah Indian Mounds, not too far from where the Dogman sightings are in North Paulding County. Okay, so, but anyways, I took my son there. I've mentioned this on the show before. I took my son there for a Halloween walkthrough, storytelling time. And as we were leaving, it was like a haunted forest. They had all these people dressed up in costumes and reenactment soldiers out there, but they were ghosts. They were pretending to be ghosts and zombies and stuff. It was actually really cool. And we were walking back to the car, and the cannon started firing on the battlefield, Mark. Wow. And it was so loud, the ground was shaking. And we could feel the vibrations, and it was like boom. And then a few seconds later, it was like boom. And another one, I mean, we heard at least 3 or 4 at least cannons firing, and they weren't shooting fire. They were not firing cannons out there that night. Okay, so those were like phantom cannon fires.
Wow.
Yes. Yeah.
it would be weird to experience, especially with no cannons being fired.
Yeah. Well, it took a minute to process because I thought, well, that's weird. They're just giving us a send off. They're like sending us off with a bang. Like that's weird. But the people that live in the neighborhoods around like Kennesaw Mountain Battlefield in North Georgia, that's in Cobb County, and Pickett's Mill Battlefield as well. They say people that live around there claim that they hear like ghost cannon fire going off often and soldiers screaming and whooping and making all sorts of noise out there. Yeah. It's
That's
residual ghost energy, I guess. I mean, what else could it be?
Yeah, it seems to me like it's there's some kind of mechanism that allows that energy to be trapped.
Oh yeah. Well, maybe it's like I said, like a portal or something there. You know what I mean? Like with all the bloodshed that happened there. Or like Colleen said, Colleen was mentioning the Aztec calendar stone, right?
Mhm.
And that being at the same place where Gettysburg is. I mean, listen, the things that we've been talking about the Aztecs, right? I've learned a lot about the Aztecs, but one thing that like stands out, and I know this is kind of on the negative side, but it's like the human sacrifice, right?
Mhm.
And the sacrificing people and tearing their hearts out and stuff. And I mean, I know that's like it's not all the Aztecs were about whatsoever. Okay, but that's kind of what we've been taught. Like that's the thing that stands out to me. And just think about it, if that was like a place they had like an altar of any kind back then, God knows how long ago that was. Okay, thousands of years. And then we've got one of the most major Civil War battles was fought right there in that same area, and all that bloodshed there too. Sometimes it's like I've gotten this message with some of my remote viewing targets is the land requires blood. The land requires blood, and it's tragic. It's really sad, but and maybe the people, the generals who were in charge of those battles, maybe they didn't know that something had happened there that was such a place of bloodshed for history, throughout history. Maybe it's just like it's almost supernatural that battle just happened to take place there. And that's why there's so many, maybe, I don't want to say the souls are trapped. I hate to think that right there, but they're on loop for sure. There's some kind of energetic loop going on right there.
Yeah, I don't know. I would, I don't know how that would be mechanized. How that energy would be uh, on loop like that. But if you think about it, to understand the mysteries of the universe, you have to think about things in terms of energy, vibration, and frequency. So,
Yes, you do. And a curse too. You know what? That's a great point. Hey, Marty. She says the land may require blood because of a curse. Yeah.
yeah,
Like
that's what I was in such deep thought about when I was trying to answer the
deep
earlier
thoughts with
question.
Mark. Yeah.
Is because if you think about it, there's back to when I was talking about you know dark magic being utilized in the whole werewolf thing. you know it it makes sense to me that in order for certain things to function correctly, you had to have that component at certain locations, uh, in order for things to function the right way or the way that they wanted them to. Um, so it makes sense to me that there may have been some of that stuff going on at some of these battlefields that, uh, because I've tried not to say it.
Oh
So you have all these secret societies that are involved in things.
God. Yeah, that was actually in my data for that target last week too, and secret societies came up. in that. And that was with that like sphere thing out of Columbia.
Mhm.
So, anyways, it comes up, but I know what you mean. Yeah,
But to what level of involvement there is with that, I'm
exactly.
unsure. Don't come
Yeah,
at me because I roll hard.
right. Don't come at it. I think I said that at the end of my show too. I was like, "Don't come at me." Okay, it's just data. Uh, but yeah, there's a factor with that.
So to gauge, what level of interaction there is between that kind of activity and what's actually going on at those locations, it's kind of hard to to say, you know, how it all fits together.
Yeah, I know it gets a little fuzzy sometimes. It gets a little fuzzy, and so yeah, like I said, we don't know our true history when it comes to some of these things as well. And yes, yes, today we are paying respect to all of our fallen soldiers, and so I saw C. Duke had said that her great grandfather, I think, had marched back home carrying his leg with him. So actually, he came home carrying a leg and buried it. I do believe. I think we've talked about that before. So yeah, a lot of people were actually maimed. They didn't lose their lives in the Civil War, but there was a lot of body part loss, a lot of amputations that went on back there. I remember, you know what? For a very short couple of weeks or so. I mean, it was actually for a whole summer I did this, but I worked for a film production company out of high school when I was in high school. And I did a lot of cool stuff growing up. Okay. But my friend's dad, he owned a film production company and did films for like GPTV, like Georgia Public Television and stuff, I guess. I don't know. But he was going around to, we do a lot of Civil War reenactments here in Georgia. Okay. Because there's a lot of Civil War battlefields. And I got to go work on his film crew, okay, like kind of just helping out and stuff. And we went up to, actually it was down, I think it was down in somewhere in South Atlanta or something, maybe, or maybe it was in Noonan or somewhere. And we went and filmed a Civil War reenactment. And those guys are people who do those reenactments. Shout out to all of y'all who do those reenactments because they get things down to a T. Okay, all the minute details, from even their tents, their clothes, their buttons on their jackets, to their weapons, to all the equipment that they're using out there. Everything is exactly how it was back during the Civil War on both sides, the North and the South. And we went out. I remember we had to be there before the sun came up because we had to be there to film the roosters crowing and the sun coming up and all the guys waking up out of and getting out of their tents and stuff and getting ready for the day
Wow.
for their battles. Yeah, it was wild. But the point of me telling you this is that there was a house. They were on a plantation at this one particular place we were filming that one day. And there was a house, and they used a lot of houses for hospitals. And this house was used as a hospital. And I remember they had the window open downstairs, and they had a big bucket outside the window. And it was so, and when I say this is like real realistic, very realistic, they had a surgeon inside the hospital who was, people would come in, the guys would come in with shot with bullet wounds, and they would just cut off their body part. And so there was just a pile of body parts, legs and arms outside that window right there where they were just tossing them. Boom, hacking them off and tossing them out the window. I know that's gross. I'm so sorry, y'all, for squeamish. But we did a pretty intense film, a scene where they even had like the blood was like squirting and all that kind of stuff. It was wild. They like when I say they go all out with those reenactments. They went all out with those reenactments at that. So I think that experiencing all that, like I can see why there's such a residual energy at those places like that. Because it was not only like people getting shot and losing their lives and watching your brothers fall and die right in front of you and stuff. And it was just trauma, a lot of trauma happened at those battlefields. And I wasn't there for the real thing, was there for the reenactments, and it was intense, very intense today. So, anyways, um, really interesting stuff there. And okay, let's move on to the next because I don't want to keep everybody here today because it is Memorial Day, and there's a lot of stuff going on today in everybody's worlds. I did want to mention, actually, after we moved on from the Civil War, I wanted to go to the Vietnam War real quick because you gave me a wonderful show idea one day. And you and I were talking, and you were like, "Have you covered the dicyanine dye goggles?" And I was like, "No, I never even heard of them." And I did a show that may be like my number one ranked show that I've ever done on my channel, actually, with most views.
Wow.
Yeah, that's the number one show. The most watched show out of all of them. And if you guys aren't familiar with the dicyanine dye goggles, now I'm not sure if these are the actual dicyanine dye. I think these are just some that you can buy that look similar, but these are some kind of dye that they were a scientist had put into some goggles. I think it was blue, actually. During the Vietnam War, they were kind of testing these out on some of the gunners, I think, on some helicopters in Vietnam. Am I right, Mark? Am I getting it right?
Well, the original story that I came across with it was that they were in the phases of testing out different forms of night vision, and they had tested different color spectrums, and they had got into the red spectrum, and they wanted to they started looking at the red spectrum because of its clarity and the different other things that it would do. So they basically sent some of those out and um, basically told them, you know, not to give them to the pilots and to only, let the people in the back of the chopper use them. And basically, once they got to flying along, they started seeing things and they started freaking out. So interestingly, if you notice, conventional night vision is dependent dependent upon the generation that you have. Um, it's either it's got a green hue to it, and based
Mm-hmm.
varying upon generations. The higher the generation that you go is it's going to have less green to it, but it's still got green to it.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, those gunners, apparently, the ones that were on the back of those helicopters started shooting at the other helicopters.
Hmm.
Because when they put those on, now they were calling it interdimensional viewing technology. Interdimensional viewing tech. Now, I don't know if the scientists were completely aware that it was interdimensional viewing tech when they gave those to the gunners back there, the machine gunners, I guess. But my goodness, they said they were seeing demons, winged humans. Basically, I don't think they called them humans. They called them like humanoids, winged demons. Were flying up next to the helicopters. They said, and so they just started shooting at them when they had those goggles on. And they also talked about seeing piles of dead bodies down there on the ground, which people without the glasses on couldn't see that. And they described it as looking at like hell, literal
Hmm.
hell on earth is what the way they described it. And some of those guys lost their minds
Yeah,
after putting
they
those
said
on.
they said that even though they didn't wear them for a very long period of time, that some of those guys had some extreme effects. Basically, they had you know psychological issues, and think about it, you know, and I hate to use this as an example, but if you see things that nobody else can see, um, and you're pointing out to somebody's, hey, this, that, or the other, and they can't see what you see, it would have a tendency to make you feel like you're crazy.
Sounds like a typical Bigfoot hunt. I'm just kidding. Or not typical Bigfoot. Listen, usually if like we're out in the field and we're together like in a little team, if one person has an experience, we usually all have it. Okay, like usually, but not always. But yeah, it had to have been just kind of mind blowing, and plus the fact that I'm not going to say those guys were on like LSD or anything, but it was kind of known that there was some of that drug use a little bit during the Vietnam War as well. I couldn't imagine. I mean, that would be just terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. It actually was kind of reminding me not only of like demonic entities, but gargoyles. Okay, like gargoyles as well. And not to say, I mean, some people have reported to this day that gargoyles have been spotted. Okay, and maybe it's just they described them as gargoyles because they were actual demons. I don't know, flying humanoids of some sort. But there was actually some sort of, let me see if I've got my notes here. I think in World War II, maybe, there were flying humanoids as well. I'm trying to see if I can find it here. Flying humanoids. Well, I can't find it here, but back in like World War II, I believe there was, maybe it was in Japan. They were reporting flying humanoids, very much like what these gentlemen were seeing over in Vietnam, very much so. So I don't know, maybe it is demonic because they are attracted to maybe they're interdimensional. If they're seeing them with their interdimensional viewing tech, maybe they kind of phase in and out of the reality, maybe. But here we go again with the trauma, right? The trauma, the heightened awareness, the heightened energy, just everything is just heightened, and the vibrational frequency is just wonky, I would assume, right there during times of that, times of extreme stress, I would assume. And I would think that like those demonic entities would come feed off of that, right? That's what I call loosh, the blood, all that. So I would say it's kind of demonic.
Another thing to keep in mind too is, in some of those countries in the Far East, they have, different religions that they don't, America is predominantly a Christian nation, and we view things as either good or bad. And some of those religions don't view things as good and bad. They don't weigh them that way. They weigh it more in a sense of you have to have a certain amount of good and bad in order to have balance. And
Correct.
some things may be acceptable where other thing it may not be acceptable in another religion. So, interestingly, some of the research that I've done looks at that because you have, even in Asian countries, you have a lot of reports of, shapeshifters and werewolves and stuff like that. And I don't know this to be 100% true, but I think that it may not have been a thing that was frowned upon in those countries because of the way that they believe. So, I mean, it's very common in some of those Eastern countries to employ the services of a magician or a sorcerer. So it's just an interesting topic. I'll just say that.
Oh yeah, it's very interesting, and absolutely. And while you were telling us about that, I just turned the page and I have all this information on the flying humanoids right here. actually. And so let me tell the audience about this real quick, because in the Pacific theater of World War II, troops reported witnessing peculiar flying humanoids described as possessing a pair of large leathery wings like a bat. They were said to have be spotted close to military installations on numerous occasions. Silent and shy as they were reported to be, military eyewitnesses could not escape the unnerving feeling that these unearthly beings were somehow observing them. There were many alleged sightings around the time of the Battle of Okinawa in 1945. Years later, flying humanoid reports in the Pacific were still being made by soldiers. One Air Force private was on guard at Camp Okubo, I think is how you pronounce that, near Kyoto, Japan in 1952. He said the sound of the creature's wings first drew in his attention. He thought he was looking at a giant bird at first. As it got closer, it became clear that it was not. It had the body of a man about 7 feet tall and about a 7-foot wingspan. It said that it got close to him and it hovered in the air. And then he panicked. He began firing his weapon at it. We looked back at the spot where it had been. It had vanished. There was no blood, no body, no nothing. It didn't leave a drop of evidence behind. And he was not the only witness to this. There were plenty. Actually, he told his sergeant about it. And the sergeant revealed that another guard had witnessed the exact same creature the year before. Okay. So it wasn't like super common, but like every year, apparently, they were having similar stories to that. So that was like Okinawa, like Japan area. Flying winged humanoids, which some people could probably identify as like a gargoyle or a demon. I don't know. Or what if it's Mothman? Okay. Mothman doesn't seem to be as sinister, I don't think. But I don't know. We got to pay some homage to Mothman today, y'all. Okay. Because that is kind of a humanoid, but it was more like not a hairy thing. It was more like this is what that guy was seeing. I would think. I don't know. Yeah, that would have been kind of terrifying. But I mean, there's kind of a pattern though, like, with all these different wars and everything and all the different times that our military's been dispersed throughout the world. They've got stories. They come home with stories about these strange creatures. I had my buddy Bob O'Kelly on the show a couple of years ago, and he's good friends with my family, with my mom and my late grandmother, and he came on to talk about his experience with the rock apes of Vietnam, and he said that when he was 20 years old, he had just graduated from West Georgia College back then, and he said that he got drafted. And right out of college, he went straight over to Vietnam, and they put him directly into the jungles and jungle warfare. And he said it was terrifying. And he said the week that he got there, a tiger had been unalived by that unit that he joined, and he couldn't sleep. They were under constant attack all the time out in the jungle, and he said that. To add on top of that, they would get pelted with rocks by something, and it turned out one night they actually ended up seeing it because it flipped over the hammock that his superior was sleeping in. He had like an unauthorized hammock. He said you weren't supposed to have hammocks out there or something, and it was like a big rock. They call it rock apes. Went and it flipped the guy over, and after it pelted him with rocks, it flipped that guy over. And knocked him out of his hammock that day or that night. So he was like, and it was the weirdest thing. I think he said it was like around 5 feet tall or so. It was just like some people would say like an orang pentak kind of looking thing. It looked like a primate of some sort. But this happened in the jungles of Vietnam. So.
Wow.
Yeah. And I'd mentioned also during Vietnam that, there's stories about the werewolves being used in the tunnels of Vietnam. Now, I don't have any proof of that, but I've heard stories about it, just like werewolves of World War II. What is that? The Black Forest, I believe, is where they said that there were encounters with the werewolves out there, like Nazi werewolves.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. You guys are getting the alternate history lessons today. Alternate history. I guess. But nonetheless, let's see what else we have here. Oh, there's another story actually too. Excuse me. Oh, and I've got some pictures of like the German werewolves. I did find some renditions of that, like the World War II werewolves as well, because I did want to pay homage to all that right there as well. But some soldiers actually claim that they saw the Loch Ness monster during World War II. Are you familiar with that?
I have not heard that.
They weren't American soldiers. They
But
were German soldiers, I believe.
Hmm.
Let's see. Oh yeah, they believe that they had seen the Loch Ness monster while they were over there. Also, there's plenty of werewolf stories. I've got. There was an Anubis sighting as well. The U.S. Navy, a former member of the U.S. Navy, she actually had written. Okay, and I saw this article because she wrote to Linda Godfrey, and she said that it was a really weird, strange experience that she had while she was at. I think she was in Illinois. At the Naval Hospital at the Great Lakes, and she said in 1994, she and two other people, one of them ended up being her husband eventually, but they were assigned to what they call shore patrol. All three were around the base, radioing back and forth, and sometime around 3 a.m., John, who ended up being her husband eventually, did not respond to her. So they went walking over to find out where he was, and they said that he was standing there staring at the woods with his mouth open, and the woman saw a tall figure with an odd head staring back at them from the woods. She said later, she said that it looked exactly like a cartoon representation of Anubis. You know, how many times have I heard that like a Dogman, it almost looks cartoonish?
Well, that one that I saw kind of had a cartoonish look to it.
I remember you telling me that. I remember you saying that. I've had multiple people say that they look like it was almost like a cartoon. But how interesting is that? So she said that it looked like Anubis, the jackal-headed god, and that's exactly what it looked like. It had large green, yellow eyes and long arms. They said when they started walking up to it, or walked up to the guy that was standing there, the creature puffed up like a cat. And it bounded off into the night. And that was pretty much it. Okay, that's the gist of it. But how wild is that? And that was at a military installment in Illinois. Oh, by the way, I did want to mention this. I just got invited to. Remember I talked about the Annabelle doll last week? Okay. So apparently the lady who is doing the event in Illinois that I advertised, she saw the show and I got invited secondhand. Actually, I got invited, but to go to the event with Annabelle in August. I don't know. What do y'all think? Should I go or should I not go? I'm feeling like I probably should not go to that. Okay.
I wouldn't if it was me.
Oh my gosh. It's in Illinois though, and that's where we're talking about with this Anubis here. And it just made me think.
Especially if that critter is not contained.
It's not. As a matter of fact, there was a buzz going on around the internet that Annabelle was lost, that she got lost. Wink at me. She says, no. See, everybody says, no, don't go. Oh my gosh. I know it's a bad idea, y'all. I know. I think it's cool that I got invited though. How cool is that? I did get invited. Apparently they got some spots open that they're like, we'd like to invite you if you want to come. So shout out to everybody at that event. I probably won't be there. Okay. But still, I think it's kind of cool. And Annabelle's going there. The buzz was that she had become lost and nobody knew where she was. But it turns out there's just so much buzz around that daggone doll right now. I tell you what. But she was found back at home in her case at the Warrens Museum or somewhere in Connecticut, I believe. And it was just a big buzz. Just buzz. It's just more attention being put on her. to make the power stronger. Okay, so let's quit talking about her. Nonetheless, though, but yeah, that happened in Anubis in Illinois, and I think this is about it. I mean, we there's a lot of different. Oh, and there's one more story I did want to mention. We got to cover pill crawlers before we go today. Okay, we've got to cover pill crawlers. I did a show on pill crawlers a long time ago, and I have friends who have videos of pill crawlers in their yard. These things are real. When we were in the Skinwalker Cave investigation in Tennessee, we believe one poked its head around the corner down in one of the caves. These things are real. Like I said, I believe they're real, very real. And there was a case of a woman who was, let's see, where was she at? McGuire. I'm going to say this is McGuire Air Force Base, I believe. Oh yeah, McGuire Air Force Base. I don't even know where that's at. Do you know where that is? This is a woman. She said that she was female Air Force auxiliary personnel, known as the WAFs. She was at McGuire Air Force Base in 1966. This is a long time ago.
Wow.
And she said that she heard a sound coming from her bedroom, and she discovered a pair of very pale hands with long, very long fingers resting on the jamb of her mysteriously open window. So she didn't remember leaving her window open. Her window was open and there were long fingers coming through the window. She screamed, the hands retreated, and she immediately alerted the air police to the bizarre prowler. They gave chase to a tall man with his sweater pulled over his head. I know it's weird, is what they said. And they said there's not a whole lot of details on it, of course, but she said that, oh, yeah, it sounded to me like a pell crawler. Okay, there's a couple other stories that kind of go along with that, but they all sound kind of like a pell crawler, but something had this long fingers in her window. We've definitely talked about cases of like humanoid figures that have been found like on Plum Island before. I had my friend Brian Minnick on the show with Montauk is Strange, and there was a newspaper article up in New York at Long Island where a body had washed up on shore, and it looked like a human, a naked human, but it had abnormally long fingers on it. Okay, and being at Plum Island right there, I would assume it's maybe some kind of an experiment or something like that.
Could be.
Yeah, that'd be government related right there, I would think. But it's for entertainment purposes only. But yeah, that is at an Air Force base right there. So there's just numerous stories of cryptids, strange creatures, and Dogman, Bigfoot related to military encounters. So I don't know. I want to thank you so much for being here today, Mark. This has been a really cool conversation, actually.
Oh yeah, it's always good to come on. I was going to tell you real quick that I've actually seen a pill crawler in action, and it is freaky, and they are freakishly fast.
Oh my gosh, what?
And if you're not paying attention, you're not going to see them.
Oh my gosh, where would this be at the LBL?
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Well, this is just another thing to look out for. It is. And I think that you need to be really careful in caves as well. Are there a lot of caves at the LBL, Mark?
Well, I have heard that there are a few, but caves in this area, people tend to not really discuss them a whole lot. And a lot of the reason for that is because they're on private property in a lot of cases. And so it just helps keep trespassers down and all that. But now, in the LBL, I'm sure that there are some caves, but where they're actually at, I'm not sure. I have my suspicions of where they're at.
Yeah. Well, we just got to keep an eye out. There is just too much going on out there, and it's just so y'all know, there's a lot of stuff going on in all these national parks and stuff too. Okay, because that's where I do most of my research. I wouldn't be doing my research there if they weren't full of cryptids and stuff. So, and on private land too, of course. But it's everywhere. But don't live in fear, y'all. Don't be scared. Just watch your six. Okay, just watch your back. Definitely keep an eye on those kids, and don't go exploring caves if you don't need to. Okay, or unless that's just your hobby and you love doing it, y'all go do it. Okay, it's not my cup of tea, Mark. I don't like caves very much.
I don't care for them either.
There's just too much room for too much to go wrong in a cave.
I've seen
there's nowhere to run.
Yeah, and I've seen one too many scary cave movie.
Oh my gosh, what is that movie, The Descent?
Yeah.
Just watch that. It's just like going right before the summertime. You watch Jaws, and you're like, I can't get in the ocean now. Great. I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, if they do Shark Week right at around spring break, right at summertime, and it really stops you from wanting to get in the ocean. After that, watch The Descent if you're going to go into any kind of cave, and you probably won't go too deep in that cave. Okay, but anyways, that's this has been a great show. What's up, James Rink? I see James in here. Hey, James, thank you for being here. And I want to thank everybody for being here. I've seen a lot of people asking in this chat today about my birthday. It is my birthday today, actually. So I was being secretive about it, but you guys keep writing it in the chat. So thank you guys so much. Yes, it's gonna be. I got stuff to do today, y'all. I got a few things to do, and so thank you guys for the wishes. I see some of y'all knew about it. You gave it away. Okay, but today is a day that we honor our fallen soldiers and remember them. You guys, we remember them. Some gave all, and all gave some, and some gave all. I got to get that right, and that is very important for us to remember all the fallen soldiers today. And thank you for your service, Mark. I want to thank all the veterans who are listening in today and in the chat. Current military personnel, everybody, thank you so much, everyone, for your service. And thank you, Mark, so much for your service. And thank you for being here today and sharing your stories with us.
Well, you're welcome, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. Well, I hope you come back and see me again. We're gonna have some more Dogman stuff to talk about. I want to hear about that thing that they caught up at the LBL with the boobs. It looked like it had boobs on it or something. So, well, I guess we'll hear more about that later. I'll keep you posted if I hear anything. Okay.
Sounds good.
We did have Jeff, my good friend, the late Jeff Townsend, came on the show. You and I had him on. You co-hosted with me, and he had an experience with a female dog woman. So we've had some eyewitnesses that came on that had seen some female dog women before, dog men, and so it wouldn't be shocking. They got to have dog women if they're dog men, right, y'all? Got to. So, but anyways, well, you keep me posted on things that are going on up there. You keep your ear to the streets up there at the LBL for me. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Awesome.
Always.
For sure. Okay. Well, everybody, y'all have a wonderful day. Please come back and see me on Wednesday. I do have Nick Sylvester here coming on the show on Wednesday. That's going to be a fantastic show. And I can't wait to have him back. We'll be talking about all the inside scoop on cryptids and working within our government. Okay. And things like that. It's going to be awesome. So, thanks again, Mark, for being here. I will see you guys back here on Wednesday. Y'all, please stay safe out there. And thank y'all for the birthday wishes. I appreciate y'all. Okay. Bye, y'all.